Here is the video for helping you check the demo questions of Real DEE-1421 Dumps Questions of DumpsBase. It's essential to be pondering from where you can get the valid and real DELL EMC DEE-1421 exam dumps. Then you definitely need to not have to get worried, as at DumpsBase we are right here to help you with valid dumps for passing expert PowerScale Solutions Exam. Valid DELL EMC DEE-1421 Dumps Questions offered by DumpsBase are finest preparation materials for expert PowerScale Solutions Exam that could allow you to acing the actual DEE-1421 exam in first attempt, because the DEE-1421 Dumps Questions possess the 100% actual exam questions. Question number 1. A company uses a DELL EMC Isilon cluster to store greater than 1 billion files. The company often restores files from NDMP backups. Which backup technology is recommended for the environment? A. Two-way NDMP restore. B. Directory DAR. C. Three-way NDMP restore. D. Direct access restore. Answer B. Question number 2. What enables cloud pools to achieve a recall of data from the cloud? A. Creating a hard link file for every file whose data is archived to the cloud. B. Creating a softlink file for every file whose data is archived to the cloud. C. Creating a smartlink file for every file whose data is achieved to the cloud. D. Creating a copy file for every file whose data is achieved to the cloud. Answer C. Question number 3. SyncIQ policies are being configured between two DELL EMC Isilon clusters at a company's location. In addition, the company wants the ability to perform a failover at an access zone level. Which actions should be performed to meet the requirement? A. Create one NS record delegation per cluster. NS record should always point directly to the cluster SSIP address. B. Create one NS record delegation per Smart Connect zone. NS record should always point to an A record containing the zone SSIP. C. Create one NS record delegation per Smart Connect zone. NS record should always point directly to the Smart Connect zone IP address. D. Create one NS record delegation per cluster. NS record should always point to an A record containing the cluster SSIP address. Answer C. Question number 4. A company has 3 DELL EMC Isilon X2000 nodes and needs to configure 2 subnets on the cluster. The production subnet will only use a 10 GigE1 port from each node. The second subnet will use both X1 and X2 ports on each node. The company will access each subnet with its Smart Connect zone name. Given that the second subnet is isolated with no route to the DNS server, how many IP addresses are needed for each subnet to accommodate the requirements? A. 3 for production and 7 for isolated. B. 4 for production and 6 for isolated. Circa 4 for production and 7 for isolated. D. 6 for production and 4 for isolated. Answer D. Question number 5. an IT team is preparing to replicate a dataset from their existing primary DELL EMC Isilon cluster to a secondary cluster. Both clusters are licensed for Smart Lock Enterprise, and SyncIQ is used for replication. The source directory is a Smart Lock directory and the target directory must be a Smart Lock directory. When consulting with the IT team, what is a key consideration before running the replication policy? A. Enable worm on the target directory after the initial synchronization. B. Allow 1FS to create the target directory automatically. C. Manually create target Smart Lock directory before replicating. D. Specify the root user that can delete files committed to a worm state. Answer. B. Question number 6. A company plans to deploy N+2 DEE-1421 protection on a 7-node DELL EMC Isilon cluster. How much capacity will be used to store a 1,536 kilobytes file? A. 1,280 kilobytes. B. 1,792 kilobytes. Circa 1,920 kilobytes. D. 2,048 kilobytes. Answer. D. Question number 7. An IT team has implemented a disaster recovery solution. A DELL EMC Isilon cluster will replicate production data from the existing primary cluster to a planned secondary cluster. The primary cluster is licensed for Smart Lock Enterprise. A Smart Lock Enterprise type directory on the primary cluster is planned for SyncIQ replication to the secondary cluster. When consulting with the IT team, what is a key consideration when replacing the data in a SyncIQ source directory configured with Smart Lock Enterprise mode? A. Replication is allowed but a failback will copy the entire dataset. B. SyncIQ will support a failback regardless of the target's directory type. C. Target directory must be a Smart Lock Enterprise type. D. A SyncIQ policy is not supported on a worm domain. Answer. C. Question number 8. You are working with a company to migrate from a Microsoft Windows file server to a DELL EMC Isilon cluster using the account admin1 in the domain admin group. When opening a directory, you receive an error message stating, "Permission denied." You check the permissions and see that domain users are denied. Domain admin has full control, and admin1 has read permission. Why is the access denied? A. Admin1 is not the owner of the directory. B. Admin1 only has read permission. C. Admin1 is a member of the domain admin group. D. Deny ACE entry is listed first. Answer. B. Question number 9. A company has an existing DELL EMC 4-node X410 General 5 cluster with approximately 100 terabytes of SMB shares connected using 2 InfiniBand 8-port switches. The company wants a technical refresh of the cluster with a new 4-node H500 General 6 cluster with 2 16-port InfiniBand switches. The existing cluster has SyncIQ, Smart Connect Advanced, and Smart Pools licenses installed. To move the data from the existing modes to the new nodes, Which migration plan is recommended? A. Set up a new cluster with the new Gen 6 nodes and its InfiniBand switches. Use SyncIQ to migrate the data and then smart fail the existing cluster. B. Set up a new cluster with the new Gen 6 nodes and its InfiniBand switches. Use emcopy to migrate the data and then use shared up to create the shares. C. Modify the default file pool policy to move the data. Swap the existing InfiniBand switches with the new switches. D. Add the new nodes to the existing cluster. Modify the default file pool policy to move the data and then smart fail the existing nodes. Answer. D. Question number 10. A company is migrating files from a third-party storage platform that is authenticated through AD. The migration tool being used is DELL EMC EMCOPY.X, running on a separate Microsoft Windows host. In order to run the emcopy process and complete the migration, which type of account is required? A. Domain user account that is a member of the local Windows Backup Operators group on the source and target. B. Domain user account created explicitly to use ISI_volume_copy or ISI_volume_copy_VNX on the source and target. C. Local user account that has permission to use the emcopy.x utility on the separate Windows host. D. Local user account that has members of the local Windows Backup Operators group and local administrators group on the source and target. Answer. A.